Life Audio.
Fearing rejection is very innate, though. The same parts of our brain light up when we're feeling physical pain as it does when we are being rejected.
Wow.
Like social death is what we really fear.
Consider this. Without God, can we have a democracy? And if religion is removed from Washington, who pays the ultimate price? There's a new movie out called God's Not Dead, In God We Trust. The story of a small-town pastor pushed into the political arena to run against a powerful regime forcing faith and religion out of American politics. There's no better time for this movie. In today's divided culture, all of this upheaval and yearning for spiritual leadership is America's collective scream to keep God in the forefront. God's Not Dead challenges mainstream liberals in the battle for spiritual leadership, hope, and faith in America. Watch it with your family and friends. And remember the words of Ronald Reagan: without God, democracy will not and cannot long endure. Folks, we are one nation under God. Don't miss God's Not Dead, In God We Trust, a Pinnacle Peak production, in theaters September 12th.
If you feel called to make a lasting impact on lives of people all over the U.S., including those right here in your own community, then our friends at Kingdom Workers have an opportunity for you. Builders for Christ is an intersection of faith, community, and construction dedicated to bringing Christ's love, comfort, and support to those affected or displaced by hurricane, fires, and other natural disasters. Program volunteers give their time and skills to build and repair homes for local families and to religious structures like schools and churches that give entire communities resources at a time when they are desperately needed. If you're called to help make an immeasurable impact through fellowship, service, and faith, then you can support the Kingdom Workers directly through a donation or learn more about becoming a Builders for Christ volunteer at kingdomworkers.com/our work. That's OUR work.
Hello and welcome to the Encourager Podcast, where we have encouraging conversations to help you joyfully harmonize your home and work life. I'm your host, Rebecca Scott. I'm a wife, mother, designer, coach, and author. I'm here to help encourage and empower you to confidently make decisions that work for you and your stage of life, whatever that might be. Hello, encouragers. Today's podcast is brought to you by Just Thrive Probiotics, my go-to supplement to feel more energized and lighter. I also love that Just Thrive Calm supplement to keep my thoughts from spinning and to keep them more focused and in the moment. Use code Encourager to get 15% off by going to justthrive.com. I'm super excited for my guest today because we're going to talk about friendships. And this is something for me personally that has changed in about the last year to 18 months, almost stretching to 2 years. And I started realizing in the thick of raising my kiddos and with their ages, and I've always had a little background here. I've always had a built-in best friend. I have a twin sister. So for me, like I had my best friend, like check, got a spouse, got a best friend, raising the kids. But it started to dawn on me that I couldn't be with Sarah as much as I wanted to. And then Sarah, my twin sister, moved. She moved 100 miles away. And I was like, excuse me, now how are we going to connect? Well, yes, I know. We can connect in a million different ways on our phone. But there is something tangible about someone that can just pick up and she would, and just come at a moment's notice, or to be able to connect more on a physical basis because of just proximity. And so I started to pray. I asked God, I'm like, will you help fill in some of the gaps of friendships? I think I actually need them. And I say it like that because I was always like so independent. I work for myself. I'm very involved with my kiddos. I love my spouse. He is one of my great friends. I'm a little fuzzy on like if you call your spouse your best friend because I just respect him so much. And I think of that. I still think in the woman world of like, there's still things that I'm like, I'm not going to share. Not that I wouldn't share with him, but like, this is a woman thing. I need a woman around here. Okay. So that's a little bit of background there. But by praying about it, God started introducing me to people that really did meet some expectations that I didn't even have for myself or they have for themselves. And it ended up just being a really beautiful thing that has just developed over the last 18 months. So now I'm like, wow, friendships really do change things personally. So that was a long way of saying I attracted a guest that will tell us about the great friendship crisis. So welcome our guest, Jewel Hohman. Thank you, Jewel, for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to dive into everything that you talked about. It's so beautiful so many people can relate, even if they don't have a twin, like having that
Yes.
connection gap. I'm so excited to be here.
I didn't know this was a thing, but in our little pre-interview chat, it is. What is the great friendship crisis?
Yeah, so we are in a loneliness epidemic. Our US Surgeon General announced it. Even before the pandemic, about 67% of Americans reported being lonely regularly to all of the time. 1 out of 5 millennials report having no close friends. The number of best friends, if you will, like I don't like fully love that term, but the number of confidants that we have as a collective has gone down significantly. So loneliness has been steadily increasing, and there's a lot of cultural, structural things that are involved in that, but truly it's impacting all of us. It's impacting our health. It's making us more susceptible to the impacts of stress, like on our bodies. And we all know what that does for our health long term. It's impacting our life satisfaction. So the great friendship crisis is truly, a lot of us know a lot of people and we have kept up to date. My favorite example is my mom doesn't know what's going on with people she graduated high school with. I'm about to have my 10th reunion, and I know exactly what's going on with most of them. So we have like this knowledge about people we've interacted with, but we don't have the meaningful bonds that we all crave and thrive on and that are truly a necessity, like a human need. So that is the great friendship crisis.
Okay, so many thoughts here, but also, Jewel, tell us what your background is and how you got into the friendship.
I grew up being extroverted and befriending a bunch of different people, but I was a social perfectionist. I was socially anxious, which we don't realize, by the way. This is kind of a fun fact, but we associate introversion with being shy or with being socially anxious, but actually there are confident introverts and there are socially anxious extroverts. And that's what I was. And it was such a painful experience. So growing up, I did a lot of overthinking. I never really believed my friends liked me. And this was just a pain I thought was going to be a part of my life. And then when I graduated college, like so many people, the loneliest population is actually those in their mid-20s to their mid-30s. That is because we start to have this really big shift in our lives where we start focusing more on marriage, our kids, our careers, we move. So I was in that boat, and then the pandemic hit. And I was like, wow, all my friends have moved away or are having kids, and I'm not there yet. I have no idea how to really make a friend. And I don't want to spend the rest of my life in this kind of pain. I don't want to spend the rest of my life as this social anxiety I didn't realize that I had. So when that hit, my background is in sociology and psychology. I worked in a psych lab, so I have a privilege and knowledge of knowing how to read research. And so I really dove into it and I started applying it to myself. I got compliments all the time of people being like, oh my gosh, like, how did you get so confident? Or like something's different, like your energy has changed. And then when I really created the friendships that I have now, people would be like, how did you do that? And can I go on your girls' trips? And I had known that loneliness was a huge problem, right? I knew that, but it was a complete other experience for people to be telling me that because there was so much shame that I had within myself for this issue. And I realized when people were telling me about it, oh, like the stats almost became alive, if you will. They became human. And I was like, oh my gosh, this really is not me. And this is something so many of us are struggling with. And I, just like myself, I don't want people to carry this pain for the rest of their lives.
Okay, so tell us really practically, how did you go about it? So you're like, okay, well, I have a degree in this. I have this background information. I know how to read research and go into this. How did you start like literally like planning dinner dates? Or like, how did you go about like, hey, I want you to be my friend. What does that look like?
One thing that I kind of learned through experience was that I knew enough people. So often I was trying to make new friends. And so I was asking new people to go on like coffee dates with me and new people to go on dinner dates with me. And it really is, starting all over. And I do think there is a time and place. Sometimes people are lonely for a sense of being a part of something bigger than themselves. They're lonely for community, not necessarily meaningful friendships. But I really wanted those bonds. So one thing I did was I know so many people. I've been a part of so many groups. Again, socially anxious extrovert, okay? Like I was a part of all these groups. I was like, I know I have met some amazing people. And so what I did is I wrote down and literally made a huge list. And I was like, who are all of these women that I admired, that I appreciated, and that it didn't turn into a friendship? And then when I was learning about all of the friendship research, I was like, okay, I'm going to prioritize. And it wasn't that some people were better than others. It was just, okay, some people were in my town, if you will,
Sure. Yeah,
or nearby.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, proximity. I was like, okay, I'm going to prioritize 4 of these women to apply this friendship research with. And again, global pandemic, y'all. So I prioritized these at the time through FaceTimes and stuff like that. I planned a girls' trip, and this was a little bold and brave and brash, especially for an overthinker. But I was like, I'm going to plan like a staycation where we all COVID test, and then we go to this Airbnb and spend time together. So I did that with these 4 women. Now, 2 of them are some of my, if you will, like best friends. There's like 2 of my priority people. They're my go-tos, my confidants. One of them, I deepened the relationship and the bond, but she's still like just a good friend. And then the other one rejected me. But I'll tell you what, because I was doing this, part of the reason why I did this as well with 4 women is because I didn't want to be like, it has to work with this person, right? And so I wasn't graspy about it. And I was applying all of this knowledge I was learning about, confidence and about self-compassion to that situation. So honestly, the rejection really just fueled me more.
Wow. Okay. So now you keep referencing friendship research. Is this your own work in this, or this is what you were studying? Tell us about that.
This is what I was studying. So to give credit where credit is due, Shasta Nelson has been a huge inspiration of mine. She really, truly pioneered this work and this research. Now there's a bunch of people as well that are starting to do research as well, especially because the problem is becoming more and more prevalent. But honestly, we really owe it to her. She was the background.
Okay, so you study her stuff, and then you mentioned a few things, like you built confidence first and then self-compassion. Tell us about those 2 steps.
The confidence it's a different process and different research involved, and there were different idols, if you will. Dr. Ellen Hendrickson and Dr. Kristen Neff were huge for me, and they both have really brilliant books if anyone wants to check them out. Okay. And I will say it was easier for me to really work through that social anxiety and honestly the shame that I was having, partially because I had spent so much time beforehand in therapy. It wasn't like I needed to delve into the past and the traumas and like where it came from. It was more just about like, for me at that time, building skills and creating honestly new thought habits. So that was more the confidence piece.
Consider this. Without God, can we have a democracy? And if religion is removed from Washington, who pays the ultimate price? Well, there's a new movie out called God's Not Dead, In God We Trust. The story of a small-town pastor pushed into the political arena to run against a powerful regime forcing faith and religion out of American politics. There's no better time for this movie. In today's divided culture, all of this upheaval and yearning for spiritual leadership is America's collective scream to keep God in the forefront. God's Not Dead challenges mainstream liberals in the battle for spiritual leadership, hope, and faith in America. Watch it with your family and friends. And remember the words of Ronald Reagan, without God, democracy will not and cannot long endure. Folks, we are one nation under God. Don't miss God's Not Dead, In God We Trust, a Pinnacle Peak production in theaters September 12th.
If you feel called to make a lasting impact on lives of people all over the U.S., including those right here in your own community, then our friends at Kingdom Workers have an opportunity for you. Builders for Christ is an intersection of faith, community, and construction dedicated to bringing Christ's love, comfort, and support to those affected or displaced by hurricane, fires, and other natural disasters. Program volunteers give their time and skills to build and repair homes for local families and to religious structures like schools and churches that give entire communities resources at a time when they are desperately needed. If you're called to help make an immeasurable impact through fellowship, service, and faith, then you can support the Kingdom Workers directly through a donation or learn more about becoming a Builders for Christ volunteer at kingdomworkers.com our work. That's OUR work.
Like you just mentioned, Jewel, one of the things that I think we overdo, and you said like you're an extrovert but had social anxiety about it. That is its own little podcast right there. Is like, oh, whoa, what's going on there? But how come like when we have a girl date, we get brave and we're like, okay, we're going to have this girl date. And I am so guilty of this. Do I walk away overthinking everything that I said and wondering like, okay, was it beneficial for them? Did I like serve them well? What kind of things did I take? Why do we overthink it so much?
There's a bunch of different reasons with what you said of like, was it beneficial for them? Did they like me? You know, how was it? I think that we do that primarily because we want the friendship to go somewhere. We fear rejection, which might sound, painfully obvious to some people, and they might be like, oh, I just got to stop, fearing rejection. Fearing rejection is very innate, though. The same parts of our brain light up when we're feeling physical pain as it does when we are being rejected.
Wow.
Like social death is what we really fear. And if you think about it, it makes a lot of sense because back when we were just, in like groups of people, if we were excommunicated, we weren't going to survive, right? We need other people to survive. So that is a huge reason on why we start to overthink as well. However, one piece of research that I think is really, really fun is something called the liking gap. And this is research that basically shows that people like us more than they think we do. So this study showed that people would assess after they would spend time with somebody, meet somebody, they would assess, okay, do I think this person enjoyed our time together? Do I think this person liked me? They would assess it lower than the other people would assess the situation, if that makes sense. So the person that they were spending time with often reported them higher. So we have this liking gap. People like us more than we think they do.
Yeah. So kind of like, I love the idea of taking percentages, like take off 30% of what your own thoughts were and see where that sits with you and feels with you. Do you have any other practical things? Like, I love that you were like, okay, I made this huge list. I narrowed it down to 4 people that I was like, I'm going to connect with. Then you planned a girls trip. One was like, nope, not going to fit for me. How did you continue to nurture those relationships after the girls trip? And how did it go? How did the girls trip go?
Yeah, it went so well. So what we do know about friendship research is that every friendship ever has 3 things. And this is a lot of Shasta's work. So if you can imagine like a triangle, that base, that bottom there is meaningful moments. So moments where we feel seen, understood, supported, where we share a laugh, where we have fun with somebody. So that's the base. And then we increase a bond with somebody. We go deeper with somebody. And we move people, if you will, from acquaintances at the bottom of our triangle up to the pinnacle, to the point where our confidants are. Okay. And we do that by doing 2 different things. So they're almost like the other sides of the triangle. And that is through consistency and vulnerability. Now, consistency can really be broken down into 2 parts, and that is frequency and history. So frequency, this is why so many of us become friends with our coworkers.
Yes.
Because we see them every day. We have a lot of frequency.
Okay.
Yep. So that's how the consistency is built there. However, for history, a lot of us, have friends that we've had since kindergarten, or like we have like our roommate from college, or a friend that we went to church camp with. And we still feel really close to them, even though we only see them like 3 times a year. Yeah. Or 4 times, whatever it may be, because we have so much history built up with that person already. However, besides the frequency or history part of it, consistency is really important. So another example, I was a part of a mastermind that would meet in person every 6 months. And I was a part of this group for like 4 years. And when we would meet every 6 months, we would spend like 3 days together. That's a lot of consistency. And it was their tradition of showing up, right? Like twice a year. So that was a lot of consistency, and that really built a lot of deep bonds rather quickly through that. Now, the other side, so we move people up through increasing our consistency with somebody, as well as through our vulnerability. And when some people hear this, they love it. especially podcasters, because they love having these kind of conversations and going deep and being vulnerable. And then some people on the opposite end of the spectrum will literally be like, oh my goodness.
No, I don't want to have to do that.
Right. But no matter where you are on the spectrum, I think it can be relieving or just even fun to think about that vulnerability is just seeing a little bit more of somebody and them seeing a little bit more of you. And then you just increase that. So if we take that coworker example, and if they come to your house on the weekend or after work, that's vulnerable because they are seeing you outside of that work environment. They're seeing the way you decorate your home, right? They're seeing a non-work version of you that's vulnerable. So how I did this, I loved your question of how did the girls' trip go? It was amazing. It was magical. We actually reference it all of the time. But this girls' trip hit on all three of those points, and it was a way to truly speed it up because we were spending a lot of time together. We were creating a lot of history and consistency together through, and it's also vulnerable to see the way somebody wakes up and see the way somebody gets ready for bed. Yeah. That's vulnerable as well. So it really hit on all of those components. But one thing that I made sure to do on this girls' trip was to really have a lot of meaningful moments. So to create moments where we were having fun and being goofy. And, you know, I brought things like games and stuff ahead of time to do that. I am kind of known for this in my circle, but I really think everybody should take this, where like having like a sharing circle, if you will, where we have people go around and like share whatever it is that they want, whether we're talking about a memory, whether we're talking about opinions on something. I'm really big on doing like your wins and woes, like your highs and lows of the week. Okay. So I created a lot of meaningful moments with things like that. And honestly, that sped up the friendship a lot.
I love too that the idea of consistency didn't necessarily mean once a week, once a day, once a month. You said 6 months. And that was still consistent enough that it still built a depth of friendship that obviously you've carried throughout however long. So is your mastermind meeting anymore?
I'm no longer part of that mastermind, but I will say I just very recently, like brand new to the world, just launched a podcast, and a ton of them were so supportive, and I really leaned on them and their support to reach out. Because honestly, again, once we have built this connection, the consistency is really important. Like even if you only check in with somebody like once a year after that, you really have like a connection bank, if you will. You've already invested a bunch of connection. And so,
well, more frequently, the consistency goes alongside the history, because then you develop a history with the person because of the consistency, no matter how frequent the consistency is. And the vulnerability part, I'm like, oh, that's no problem. And then you started saying things like, oh, yep, nope, that is vulnerable. So I think I had kind of the wrong definition of what vulnerable is, but you're right. Like it's when they see your home, it's just a version of seeing you outside of how they regularly do and showing different sides of yourself. That is an act of vulnerability, which I think takes off some of the pressure or the weight of the word vulnerable. It could just mean, like you said, it's just seeing another side, seeing your home, seeing how you are with your kiddos, seeing how you are with your spouse, not in a judging way, just in a vulnerable, like, oh, okay, well, she's normal too. There's still candy wrappers on the floor there. Like, you know, sometimes I think that would be the embarrassing thing, but I'm going to lean in hard to be like, no, I'm just being vulnerable. Like this is life. Yes. And then it makes you also more approachable, which is also friendlier when you're not afraid to approach what their version of home life might be.
Oh, so good. And there's so much research that actually backs up what you were saying, which is so fun. But I like to tell clients, we don't connect to robots. We don't connect to like, you know, cool, pristine robots. We connect to humans. Yes. We connect to people the most, and we can go, oh, me too. Yes. Right? Yes. So yeah, and that works for a lot of my social perfectionists that are always trying to say the right thing, the right time, and the right way. We don't need to do any of that.
Yeah. And if you did connect with somebody while you were doing your social perfectionism, it's not going to be a very deep connection because it's not truly how you are behaving, which I think would fuel the anxiety and the loop of like, I'm not enough. I can't do this. So it's better to show up as yourself and collect the friends that can connect with you on those levels.
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, Jewel, this has been very informative. And I think you're right, like how we started. There is a friendship crisis We have got to figure out how to pursue friendships that are mutually beneficial, that we can be vulnerable with, that we can pay attention to maybe the history, the consistency, the frequency, like Jewel talked here. Where do we get these amazing resources that you have talked about?
Yeah, so I have 2 trainings that I am so proud of. They were used at the largest women's conference in my state, and they were so good that my assistant and we decided to turn them into trainings for everybody to access. So if you go to connectionwithjewel.com, we have those available. They are how to belong at any event. So how to create that feeling of belonging so you can walk into that room. Doesn't mean your social anxiety has to completely go away, but that way you can walk into that room and have that sense of belonging, carry it with you and create it with the conversations that you have. And then we have the other training, which is how to turn people you meet into friends. So it talks a little bit more about the triangle and the friendship research we did today and helps you kind of apply it in a way that really works for you. So if you are interested in those, connectionwithjewel.com.
Oh, awesome. I'm excited for those 2 resources to get in the hands of those of us that are kind of thinking through friendship. One more thing, as we always end the podcast with Jewel, is how can you encourage our listeners?
I would love to encourage everybody to just look around them and appreciate and connect with the people that they have in their lives. That's also going to fuel you in making new friends. Connection is energy. But just to go around and absorb that and to let that fuel you on its own. It's just such a beautiful resource that, we need to tap more into.
And that we've under-tapped as the research is showing. So the power of connection and friendships is so great. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much for those resources. We will put those in the show notes. Until next time, encouragers, we got this because he's got us. Thanks so much for tuning in. If the Encourager podcast has helped or encouraged you in any way, please subscribe to the show and leave a 5-star review. And then help us spread the message of encouragement and hope by sharing the podcast with others. Ready to bring more organization and joy into your life? The Encourager Academy helps you harmonize your home and work life through our online course and coaching programs. Our 5-system approach, me, food, family, work, and home, tackles your biggest obstacles, offering lifetime access to video lessons and guided worksheets. Learn at your own pace with practical tools and strategies. Enroll now at encourageracademy.com and use code WeGotThis for $50 off. Are you ready for clarity and purposeful progress without the overwhelm? Join the Clarity Blueprint membership community. Transform your life with like-minded women, taking small, meaningful steps twice a month. Access monthly calls, worksheets, videos, guest speakers, and a supportive community with a very affordable price. Say goodbye to chaos and hello to purposeful progress. Visit theencouragerpodcast.com and join today.
If you're hearing this right now, you're probably like, who the heck is this? And why are they playing during my favorite podcast? And I get it. I don't want to take up too much of your time, but I do want to introduce myself. My name is Trevor Tyson, and I'm the host of Trevor Talks, where we talk to real people about real topics and real stories. I just want to invite you, if you love podcasts, if you love music, if you love books and love hearing from the people who create it, come check us out at Trevor Talks. Simply go to Google or Life Audio, type in Trevor Talks, and it'll pop on up. Hope you have a great day.